I'm Jessica Thompson. I work at the Magic Shop recording studio in Soho, New York, and I do mastering and restoration. When I'm doing vinyl transfers, one of the areas where I really like to nerd out is calibrating the turntable. And that's because it makes such a huge difference in the audio that you get off the record. So, of course, I have my level. I like to make sure the platter is level. If it's not, it's going to affect the way the record's going to spin and the sound that you're going to get off of it. So, once I do that, I have this handy little gadget for checking the tracking force. That's how heavy the needle is going to press into the record. So if your tracking force is too light, then you're not going to get as much information off the record. If it's too heavy, you run the risk of digging that needle into the record and either damaging the record itself or getting a lot of surface noise and grit. So then I have my choice of needles depending on which one's going to sound best. And usually when I'm working on a vinyl transfer, I just try a couple of needles and see what sounds clearest and what sounds best and most appropriate to the material. Before a big project like this, it's just a good idea to make sure your stylus is clean. Doesn't have any dust on it from the last transfer. So, stand there. Wipe up the cleaner. And you should just kind of drop it into that and lift it back up. This makes such a huge difference when you're working on vinyl transfers because the bulk of the restoration work that I have to do comes from surface noise. And if you can vacuum out all of the dust and the grit and the 40 years of cigarette smoke and grime that's in the grooves, you don't have to take care of it in the digital realm. So basically with this guy, it's a special little liquid. So get the liquid all up there. Put the record on. Got to go around a couple of times to get the liquid nice and deep in the grooves. And vacuum out the grooves. And I would really consider this one of the most important parts of doing a vinyl transfer. If you have a clean record, you can get a clean transfer, and that makes all the difference in the world. Then you're getting what was originally there. With this project, I started at the first track and I listened through, and every time there was a click, I would manually take it out using a restoration tool called Isotope. So if I hear a click or a pop in the music, what I like to do is highlight this tiny microsecond of music, and I use spectral repair. And what that does is graph this little microsecond in terms of time, frequency, and intensity. So here you can see a spike. That's the little click right there. It shows up as a little spike, especially in the high end. So then I can tell this software to interpolate information from either side of it. And what it'll do is draw information from the left and the right side of that tiny snippet of music and replace the spike with what should have been there. As I said before, I used a pretty light touch on this because these recordings speak for themselves and they don't need to be modified in any major way. One of the tools that I love to use for projects like this is this Dangerous Backs EQ. It's super, super subtle and it's a broad stroke. So it's really great for tipping things in the balance. If you have two tracks that have similar instrumentation, but one of them is missing a lot of low end, you can just add in a tiny, tiny bit of low end and tip it into balance, or you can subtract a little bit of the high end and it kind of tips it the other way. So it's really subtle and great for kind of just evening things out. There's a lot of gear in this analog chain that I didn't use for this project because it didn't really need it. I did run things through this King FET 30 compressor, mainly just to get a little bit of elegant tubey warmth. And that's kind of recapturing stuff that's lost when you put something on vinyl. If you get a really good, clean, beautiful vinyl transfer, largely what I have to do is very, very subtle and minimal, kind of just enhancing what's already there. I did make it a little bit louder because the vinyl is, it's a quiet medium. From the engineering perspective, the challenging thing in working with a collection like this is you want it to sound cohesive, like it's all part of the same thing, but the tracks are very different. And you want to be true to each individual track as well. So that's where the detective work comes in. You listen to each individual track and figure out where it belongs within the larger picture. One of the coolest things about working on a project of this scope is that you get such a broad idea of what was happening in a particular time and a place. These were recorded over several years, some of them in studios, some apparently out in the streets, and some in various rooms. And you really feel like you feel transported. You really feel transported to this time and space when you work on, a project of this magnitude. And you become, you learn the language of the music. So, for example, when I was listening back to some of this material yesterday, I immediately could flash back to when I was working on it. And I guarantee you, 40 years from now, I could hear a snippet from this project, and I'll know what it's from.